In this episode, you'll learn how a local criminal operates and see ways to resist him. You will see spectacular hand-to-hand fights in the corridors of the hospital. Our heroes will find themselves in a desperate situation, but will they still be able to win? The criminal the police are holding is dead, so Captain Kion has to figure out how to see if his belongings can be taken. He and his subordinate went to the house of the policeman's girlfriend. The girl turned out to be an old acquaintance of his. They hadn't seen each other in a long time, and it turns out she's pregnant. She let the men into the house. They come in and sit in the living room. The girl gave them each a can of lemonade. After that, they decided to get to the heart of the matter. Turns out the captain knew the girl's husband very intimately. He was his mentor. The guy thought of him as his big brother. But they had to split up pretty quickly as they both started their own lives. For example, the captain became a very good lawyer. Speaking of this guy, his name is Ben. And now he's at work, he should be back soon. The girl decided to call him to find out how long to wait for him. It seems that he was also one of the detectives and was on one of the hard cases right now. If you haven't guessed who we're talking about yet, I'll explain. We're talking about a police officer who was recently killed by a rooftop drowning driven by a bad guy. His pregnant wife is waiting for him at home and doesn't suspect a thing. And all of these events that were being shown now happened while her husband was still alive. But as we remember, Ben couldn't make it home that evening because he was taking Chin to the hospital. It was because of time constraints and workload that Captain Kion left the police force and started his own firm. The captain inquired about her husband's work, but he won't tell his wife. Afterward, they talked some more about the baby. Bench wants a baby girl, so he believes they'll have a girl after all. He even bought a teddy bear for the baby. Of course, the detectives didn't come empty. They handed and brought a box of fruit as a gift. When he gave the bag of clothes to Chin, he also noticed a stuffed bunny. Benj bought it for his baby. The girl apologized to the captain for stopping by for nothing because he couldn't find Benj at home. But the man reassured the girl they had stopped by on the way, so they hadn't lost any time. No big deal. After saying goodbye to Ben's wife, he and the deputy left. It turned out that the captain was not as simple as he might seem at first glance. He didn't go to this girl's house to find Benj or to check on her health. He and his aide went in for their purposes, and when the assistant was carrying apples to the kitchen, he took something with him. After that, the captain called Benj to find out when they could meet. The guy was really swamped with work, and he needed to get it over with so he could get to his wife's delivery. Such an event should not be missed. The kitchen assistant had taken a picture of Ben and his wife together. They went to the car and handed it over to the hooded man. Lu Ying, the same criminal who was held in a cell and somehow managed to strangle himself, managed to dislocate his own cartilage. It's very difficult to do because after oxygen deprivation, the brain shuts down and the body becomes weaker. And to strangle someone, much less yourself, is even more challenging. The cops wondered and didn't understand how he had managed to do such a thing. When everyone was already in the room and thinking about what had happened, Lin had already learned that she had stabbed Lu in the stomach. Even though not of her own free will, it was done by her own hands. After analyzing the situation, the detectives concluded that since the perpetrator was able to control Lin and use her to hit Liao, then maybe the same perpetrator took control of Lu Yumin's body and strangled him. But despite these facts, there are still many questions. No one knows who is controlling the people. How does he do it? And how do you tell the difference between an addict and a regular person? Or how can you avoid it and save the people around them from the villain? But one thing is certain. He will 100 show up again when he finds out Lo is alive. There's an entire wing the police had to themselves at the hospital. It was empty, with no staff or other patients. The detectives had the whole place to themselves, with security cameras all over it. An app downloaded on your phone could control and monitor them from anywhere. That's where they're going to put Lao to keep him safe. Lin also asked a friend of hers to register under Lo's name to keep him safe for sure. When Chin struggled with the criminal in Lin's body, he heard him say something special. He said that Chin's strength was also tied to the injury. From these words, it could be inferred that the criminal's abilities also depended on the photos. Afterward, when Chin didn't answer her question, the girl said the answer must have been right. Then she added how curious it was and that she wanted to take this power away and experience it for herself. That means that the powers that the boys have can be taken away. No one knew that. Since the power is based on photos, the guys cleaned up their social media feeds, and because he took control of Lin then, she rarely posts pictures. In order to find the perpetrator, they need to start by going through everything on Lu Mind. It's possible they're very close acquaintances. The cops managed to scrape their correspondence and handed over Lu's cell phone so he could look at the photos. This was all done thanks to the police ITU, guys who were able to hack into the perpetrator's cell phone. To make sure that data doesn't go to waste, Lou needs to see any of the recent photos on that phone. Even though the guy's still weak and just waking up, he decided to take the job. When he unlocked the phone, they saw a picture of Ben and his wife. That's when everyone realized that their partner was missing. The captain immediately rushed after his ward. Chen wanted to help him, but the memory of Lin made him stay in the room to keep an eye on his friend. Still, no one knew how long power could act on a person. Chen contacted the captain by phone, but he still hadn't found his partner. Maybe there was something suspicious about him when he picked Chen up. The kid tried to remember the whole car ride. The only thing he remembered was the picture on his cell phone's desktop. Had he really been taken under control? When Ben's wife was cleaning the house, she noticed that their photo together was missing. But she didn't pay much attention to it. She just wanted to see her husband and hug him. It seemed that would never be possible again, because Ben was on the edge of the roof from which he had jumped down. His lifeless body fell on the roof of the car behind the detective. I guess it's not his destiny to see his child. The captain immediately ran up to him to give him some help, but by then it was too late. Benj was already dead. The guys in the ward didn't know what had happened to their partner yet. They decided to help the captain find the boy. Lin was the first to see the horrifying footage on the security camera. Lo saw on the cameras that someone was coming down the stairs. It could be the perpetrator, so Shen quickly followed him. The hospital has only 2 exits, so they're bound to catch him. Lin ran with the guy. He wanted to leave the girl in the room with Lu, but she refused and insisted on going together. He and Lin would block the 2 exits. They were halfway to the exit and they were trying to call the captain, but they couldn't get through because the captain had been knocked out. Lo checked the cameras and there was no elevator to the first floor. He advised the guys to run up the fire escape to get ahead of the perp and catch up with him there. When Lu returned to the cameras, he noticed that the bandit was out of sight. To be more effective, he decided to use his powers. In doing so, he was able to track the movement of both the boys and the perpetrator. When the unsub was approaching the exit, Lin ran towards him. He was not at all embarrassed, much less frightened. She demanded Lu Mine's phone number from him, but the man broke away and ran in the opposite direction and was met by Chen on the stairs. There was no way out. He was caught. The man became really hysterical. He was sure he was going to be killed. It seems that he was desperate and ready to kill anyone who got in his way. So he threw his fists at Lin. Even though it was just the 2 of them, it was hard for this man to resist. He wasn't so weak. In a few moves, he threw the guys to different sides. When Lin got out of the formation, only Chen was left to fight the culprit. This man clearly had some kind of technique or had some previous martial arts training. He had no trouble taking Chen down again and again. But then Lin came back into the fray. But even though the 2 of them were attacking from different directions, they couldn't defeat the villain. Finally, using surprise and sudden movements, they managed to bring him to the floor. But not for long, he got up again and continued to fight with renewed vigor. Realizing that they couldn't fight him with their bare hands, Lin armed herself with an hanger. It did help, but because Lao used his strength even though he was weak enough to do so, he only got worse. The hopes that the guys would find Lu Min's cell phone in the criminal's possession were not fulfilled. Hearing this, the man laughed, and then the guys realized that there was someone else in the hospital. Strangers were coming from everywhere, obviously aggressive. The perpetrator ordered his accomplices to kill the guy and took the girl for himself. Someone came to Lu's room, but when he opened the door, he saw a stranger instead of his friend. Did they lose? And is this how it's gonna end?